Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program certification course. Everyone can be seated that's here. And if somebody can flip that monitor on that's right in front of me, I don't think that one's on. So if you can be turning in your handbooks, and we'll go through some things to rehearse here in a minute, be turning in your teacher's handbooks over to page 32. So over to page 32. And then while you're turning there, this is just for your notes, so you can write them down if you didn't hear this last class. And we'll keep announcing this so everybody can get the information, and this will help it spread because we use these things internationally. If you're looking to listen to the Peaceful Solution through podcasting, once again, if you search the Peaceful Solution, you can readily find this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and also Spreaker. If you have any of those apps, you can just search the Peaceful Solution, and you can go on and listen to all the certification courses, audio only, but they're there for your podcasting, so you can have something to listen to. And as we said before, teachers are more than welcome to take and use the pieces they can use out of these, because these classes are actually teaching teachers how to teach the book and just give a lot of helpful hints. There's a lot of things that you will implement yourself through the experiences you've had in your life, and of course daily events change, current events change. There's so much in the news that's always changing, and so much in your communities is changing. So there's always an endless supply of examples and interaction you can have with your students, especially over what we're talking about at this particular point, which is emotions. And and when a teenager's life, I know for myself, if a person can learn to control their emotions when they're young, and I didn't do too well at that. It was only later in life when I started learning the details to the Peaceful Solution that really gave you insight on how to fix these little things. And it still takes a long time to work on these daily. But when you can get this under control or have an understanding about emotion at a young age, it helps a lot as you progress through life. And we think about decisions that are made, and when you really think about it, whenever a situation comes up, you have the opportunity to either help make a decision or make a choice, go the right way or the wrong way. And there's a lot of times, due to our wanting to retaliate or wanting to let everybody know how angry we are, which is not controlling that emotion, well, we kind of lash out and we take a situation that could have actually been dealt with in a really proper way, a peaceful way, and we can prolong it. We can drag it out for, the rest of that day, the rest of that week, a month, a year. You can drag it out for decades if you want to. Just look in the news and look at what countries are doing at this time. But in the end, true leaders are problem solvers. True leaders find a peaceful solution and they resolve the situation as soon as possible. And that's truly the difference between what a peacemaker is and what a peacemaker is not. Whenever we have situations arise and we make a mistake or we make a bad choice, we need to rectify that fairly quickly. We need to find the solution and solve it, and not let our emotions get the best of us. So hold your place there on page 32, and of course turn to LP2D, Lesson Plan 2D, and that's the grade tabbed area here in the teacher's handbooks. And if you haven't downloaded the self-control unit yet, please do so. You can download them free of charge, and of course by now you'll have the character teacher's manual, the acceptance teacher's manual, and now the self-control unit, which all three are very much needed together. And you can download all of those free of charge. And as we've said, you can print them off for your students. And if you're needing PDF copies of the student's manual, all you have to do is email us, or you can just send your question in there to the Facebook page. Once again, our email is info@peacefulsolution.org, and we will readily get these out to you. Life and technology has become a great thing. Instead of mailing books, we can email now. And that's become such a useful tool in the era of COVID, to where somebody needs a book on the other side of the world, and we can email them that book and get it there, just in a few seconds. Where when we used to mail books, I remember one time I mailed a box of books to Kenya, and it was just a regular sized box. And I don't know what the shipping rate would be today. This was probably 10 years ago. And it was $900 to mail those books. And I mailed those books and I signed, saying that I can't hold anybody responsible if anything occurs to them. And I thought they'll never see those books. And about a month and a half went by and I actually forgot about the books. And after a month and a half, the people over in Kenya that requested the books let me know, hey, the books came in today. And I thought, wow, well, it took a month and a half, but at least they got there. Well, now in today's society, if you've got a printer or if you've even got a computer where you can just put it up on an overhead, we can get these things to you. And you might be asking, why do I need a student's manual? When you're teaching your class, you don't want all the answers to be on the screen. It doesn't really challenge them. So the student's manual doesn't have the answers that's in the lines or the blank spots where the teacher's manual will have them italicized. So if you need any of those things, please just let us know and we will send them to you as fast as possible. But here on Lesson Plan 2D, we left off in the middle of Procedure 3, so we're going to reread Procedure 3 once again. And it says, explain to students that we are all born with a capacity to experience a wide range of emotion. And we talked a lot about those negative emotions already, and we'll kind of cover some of them again. Well, the first step in effectively controlling our emotions is to become familiar with and be able to identify the variety of feelings that we all have. So this is part of what you're telling your students. This is instruction you're giving your students. You're not really reading it, but you're telling your students these things. And don't ever take for granted, well, people just know these things. They're common sense. No, they're not. They're not that common. Just go to a gas station right now and watch people pay for gas. I was talking about all the negative emotions I had when I seen gas prices last class. I think that gas price was pretty decent now compared to what I'm seeing now. I didn't know numbers went that high on the gas station signs, but I guess they do. And I'm just hoping they don't get into 4 digits wide instead of 3. I'll be satisfied with what I see now. But once again, explain these things to your students. Let them know that they're going to be able to identify emotions. That means they're going to be looking. You're making them aware. You're letting them know, hey, this is something you need to be aware of. This is something that when they arise, you're the one that's going to have to control these things. And if you're not aware of them, you can't control them. You can only control what you're aware of. If you're not aware of it, you're going to have a hard time bringing things into, you could say, subjection or into control. Well, it says have students turn to pages 31 and 32 of their handbooks and read the section entitled Defining Emotions. Have students pay particular attention to the emotions of anger, rage, and jealousy, and love. And we're going to talk about them a little bit more in depth as we proceed through tonight's class. And expound upon the section entitled Let's Take a Closer Look, found on page 33. Now we're going to emphasize that emotions, if acted upon without self-control, have the ability to negatively affect our reasoning, judgment, and interaction. So they actually have the potential to wind up, as we talked about in last class, we'll get into in this class, they have the potential of taking life. That's the ultimate, wrong decision. That's the ultimate failure in making decisions in life, is when we cost someone else their life. That's pretty definite decision right there. We can make decisions that hurt people's feelings, which that's damaging enough, but we can go back and make amends in most situations, and we can fix those problems. It's better that it's not done, but that's still fixable. Whenever someone loses their life, that's a pretty definite situation. So with those things in mind, let's turn over to page 32. Look back to 31 before we get to 32, and let's look again. Once again, if you remember, William covered on page 30, there at the very top of page 30, what are emotions? Notice it said emotions are strong physical and mental responses triggered by what we experience. And remember what a trigger was. It's something that starts a process. And instead of a gun where you pull the trigger, people think about that all the time. But when you think about a gun, someone has to pull the trigger to get it to fire. A gun just doesn't walk out and fire itself. You have to pull the trigger. But whenever you get into emotions, we like to say, well, that person's just pushing my buttons, or they're pulling my trigger. Well, people might push your buttons a little bit. In other words, they rile you up with the information you're being told or the things you're seeing. But that doesn't mean that they cause you to become angry and then it goes into rage. We can feel the emotion of anger because we're displeased with something, but we have to choose that. And we're going to learn that no one makes us angry. We have to choose to become angry, and then how we deal with it, that's whether we control it or not. And we're going to talk about that rage we get into. And people often define anger very wrong, very indifferent to what it really is. Once again, looking over here to page 31, it says anger is a strong feeling of displeasure, resentment, or hostility. But that needs to be managed and controlled. But when someone starts throwing things, cursing, screaming, punching, that's advanced stages. That's rage. That's very different than just being upset with something. If you're punching somebody or causing physical harm, there's nothing positive about that. Remember, we started off in the very beginning about these morals and positive character, and these decisions bring no harm to yourself, someone else, or the environment. If you're punching someone, that's bringing harm. If you're verbally lashing out at someone in a very derogatory way, that brings harm. Now if you're lashing out, yelling at someone, telling them don't go in the street because a car's coming and they're not paying attention, that's not anger and that's not negative character. It would be negative character to go, well, that car's coming and he doesn't see it. Well, I shouldn't yell. I think he'll figure it out as he gets out into the street. That would be negative character right there. That's not showing care and concern. So make sure, and this is especially for the young people, if your parents yell at you because harm is in the way and they yell at you to get your attention, that's not negative character, okay? Because that's one of the most common things we get back from parents is, my child, they go to this class and I was yelling at them, hey, don't do that, that's hot. And they go, hey, you're not supposed to be yelling at me. That's not the peaceful solution. And then the parents will say, what do I do if they're getting ready to stick their hand on a pot they don't know is hot? What do I do? You yell and tell them, hey, don't do that. There's nothing negative about that. It's only negative when you look at a child through emotions and you go, hey, stupid, or you can't be that dumb, surely. That's when you get into, whenever you're degrading, whenever you're speaking down to someone, whenever you're tearing someone apart, both mentally and physically, that's when it's not acceptable. So think about that as we proceed through, and think about this anger and rage, because we're going to talk about that some more as we move along. And then even remember how fear, it's listed as a negative emotion, but it's only, all of these emotions are only negative whenever they're not dealt with, whenever they're not controlled. Because at the very top of page 31, notice it said, generally speaking, emotions can be categorized as either negative or positive. Uncontrolled negative emotions. And once again, we said underline that, highlight it, do something to make it stick out. Because once again, when uncontrolled negative emotions, they are hurtful and can undermine your growth, development, and your future. They cost lives. Whenever emotions aren't controlled, you're costing lives. And if you can get in the minds of your students, uncontrolled emotions are no different than experimenting with drugs. They're no different than driving while you're intoxicated, drunk driving, because they cost lives. Uncontrolled emotions can lead to very devastating results. And a lot of people would say, well, that's kind of exaggerated. Well, it's because we don't have, if we had something, this person was killed due to negative emotion, or a negative emotion left uncontrolled, we'd probably have a nice statistic to look at. But we don't have that for suicide. We don't have that for people taking other people's lives with murder. We have what they call bullycide. We have femicide. That's big in the Latino countries. Femicide, with a lot of women being murdered. We don't really have those statistics that identify this as the lack of control of emotion. But that's exactly what it is. And every time you see something in the news, every time you read something in the newspaper, if you know what a newspaper is, I know children these days will go, what is that? Well, I know today you have to go on the internet to see news, but newspapers, even in your everyday interaction with where you're at and where you're going, watch how people conduct themselves. Try to identify when you see someone do something, how could that situation be dealt with in a more peaceful way? I mean, we're in a society now where road rage is at an all-time high. It never slows down to where people will literally get out with a ball bat. And you've got to think about that. When you have a lot of people getting out of the car with a ball bat, okay, that's not where it started. A lot of people are making the plans of putting the ball bat in the car so if they get angry, they can get out of the car with a ball bat. That's a huge problem. Where did we start thinking that ball bats in cars were going to solve problems? For every ball bat in a car, there's a gun in another car. And if you put the ball bat and the gun together, gun's usually going to win. So for every person that thinks they put a bigger weapon in the car, there's always another one. And then itself, we've got in some of our literature, whereas an episode in Houston many years ago to where the car was used as a weapon and ran a person over back and forth continually. And it was due to the lack of control of emotions. Now, it was a really bad situation, but running the person over just landed Miss Harris in prison for quite a long time. She recently got out within, I think, the last year. And her comment was that, and this just goes to show, did she learn anything in prison? They asked her, if you could go relive that night over again, what would you do differently? And her comment was, run him over one more time. And it was like, well, obviously she did not learn to control her emotion. The peaceful solution should have been offered in the facility she was at. Now, that doesn't mean that would have changed her. Everybody has to choose to make their own changes in their own life. Choices are what our lives revolve around. And when people choose negative things, and that means the emotion's still running very high in her, obviously it didn't fix the situation, and she's willing to go back to prison for it. So obviously that didn't fix the situation either. But here on page 32, we're going to take a look at positive emotions. And it says positive emotions is the energy that fuels our moral growth and development. And if you could think about that and paint the mind, when you've got teenagers, man, they want to talk about cars. I don't care whether they're boys or girls, it's just a different type of car, what they want to talk about. From a sports car to a Volkswagen, the car might be different, but they all run on fuel. And if you can get into their minds on how when you put the right fuel in the car runs well and it's dependable. But if you put contaminants in the fuel, and you can take them through, show them what gets into biodiesel and how the algae can tear down the fuel. I've learned that the hard way. Tell them about water in the fuel. Show them how when you put things in the fuel that aren't really supposed to be there and it doesn't mix very well, how the car doesn't run very well. And it can break down. And that can actually break down to the point it just won't run anymore unless you put an enormous amount of money in it. Well, their character is the same way. When you're feeding it with all of the positive things and you're learning to manage the negative things, tonight we're talking about emotions. Those are the things we're talking about. You can keep that car, even though it might need a checkup every now and then, which it will through character education. But sometimes the checkups also come in, an adult coming in. Can I speak with you a moment? To kind of let us know something we might not be seeing. Sometimes it can be a child that comes to you to let you know something that you're not seeing, and they help you out. Anybody that points out something we're falling short in, we should be thankful, and there's no age limit on that at all. Sometimes an infant can cry to remind you, hey, you need to be changing me or you forgot to feed me. That can take place also. So we shouldn't be putting age limits on this correction. But of course, we're talking about correction that points out, hey, if we don't fix this, this could cause harm. And those are things that we can really work together as a society and build. But once again, these positive emotions, they fuel the building of our character. You can think of it as a motor running and you start putting negative things in it and the motor won't run so well. Well, positive emotions can improve the way you perceive yourself and your interaction. And we're just now getting into looking at, you can write self-respect there, perceive yourself. We're not going to get in too much to talking about self-respect tonight because in the next unit we'll have a whole chapter on self-respect. But the way you perceive yourself has a lot to do with how you view yourself and how you interact with others. If you perceive yourself in a very negative way and you don't value yourself, it's very easily proven you won't value other people either. You won't actually show respect to other people if you're not doing it to yourself. Well, once again, the way you perceive yourself in your interactions, these positive emotions, as it says here, they make life enjoyable. So if you feel like you're living hell on earth, which that's not too hard to do right now, I don't think standing in Ukraine right now, or Syria, or Iran, or Iraq, or Somalia, or Sudan, or Yemen, you can name an endless supply of countries that are being bombarded with missiles and bombs and death right now. You know, we tend to put the one on the screen that's the latest, greatest one, and we quickly forget about all the other ones. But they haven't been solved. They're still going on. I don't think going over and telling someone where a missile just drops on their house, you know, that's that $10 million missile or $100 million missile that just hit their $500 brick house or $3,000 brick house, that doesn't even make sense in itself. But telling someone that, oh, we just need to control our emotions here, this will be okay. You can tell them that, and they truly need to do that, but they're not the ones shooting the missiles. You know, leadership that's got these things going on. So when we talk about children and we say, this is for teenagers, there's a lot of people sitting in leadership right now that really need to learn to control their emotions. There's a lot of people that are controlling buttons to weapons that take lives, have the potential of taking millions of lives, that truly should think about these classes on emotions. But when you get a group of people that are like, I don't need to hear that stuff. I'm making decisions that, the world relies on me. Well, we're part of the world, and we're telling you you're not doing such a great job right now. We're not liking what we're seeing. And the R or the D in front of the name is not going to fix it. And we need to learn to make decisions not based on emotions, and we need to realize that President Putin might have a point in some things. President Zelensky might have a point in some things. President Biden might have a point in some things. They're not all right and they're not all wrong. But their lack of communication and their lack of engaging in conversation, along with Xi Jinping of China, and you can throw in any leader you want to, whether Maduro in Venezuela, you can throw in any country you want to. And there's a lot of decisions being made, as you'll hear them say, well, this is in America's best interest, or this is in Russia's best interest, or in North Korea's best interest that we do this. Well, I don't know if you realize it or not, but coronavirus didn't recognize a border. And the lack of control of emotion, a hatred for another country, is not solving the problem. And it doesn't make it go away. And these are situations that when our emotions take over, you hear more in the news than blaming, well, where did it start? Well, I think it started there. In this motion of everybody jumping on China, there's people that started attacking Asians in New York City, pushing them in front of subways, walking up and punching them just because they were Asian, because, well, the coronavirus started in China. Even though there's tons of news articles that show it was in Italy before it was in China. And this is not top secret information of conspiracy. These things are ready for you to read right there on the news that you read every day on the internet. And you scratch your head and you're like, why does this not make mainstream media? Why does this not get out there in the news? Because it's right here on websites that are valid websites. So you look at these things and you realize there's a lot of emotion involved and there's a lot of hatred. There's people right now, I dare say, that are probably blaming President Putin because gas prices are high. Is it his fault? Well, why is he upset? What was done to him to cause him to become upset? Well, that's what people should investigate. Why do we take Syrian oil as the United States? Is it okay to steal that oil from Syria? Syria's got oil problems too. They have a country coming in, taking it and selling it. Is that okay? Because when we get mad at President Putin for oil prices and our emotions start running wild and we just need to go over and take out all the Russians. Why? What does that solve? How will that solve anything? Every day people should start looking at the news. And when you see that nuclear bomb explosion, we have a wonderful video that was created by a really great young man who was learning to teach the peaceful solution. Became a great instructor in the peaceful solution. And he created a video that showed emotions left uncontrolled. It's tit for tat's what it's called. And you can go on the Peaceful Solution YouTube page, YouTube channel, and you can watch that. It's called Tit for Tat, and it's in Spanish and in English. And it showed how the end result of the lack of control of emotion, he finished it off with a nuclear bomb. And we can see that today in society. And that's real. And you see it in the news all day long now. That's all they talk about. And someone can say, are you saying that it's the lack of control of emotion that's leading to this? Yes. If we would deal with emotions of hatred, anger, jealousy, and other emotions that bring things down and stop trying to take advantage of each other in society, we wouldn't need nuclear bombs. I would people one time would do what the author said and just take the budget of every country and what they spend on war for 1 year and just invest that in character education. Invest that into showing people they're better. Invest that into feeding people. Quit dumping the rice in the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean to start feeding people with it. Start doing things that need to be done. That would help, but it takes controlling emotion first. And we're going to talk about these positive emotions and the result of these positive emotions. And of course, they can have their downside too if left uncontrolled. And people can redefine these very differently. But once again, notice it says focusing on positive emotions that can get us through life's rough spots. There's a lot of rough spots in life right now for a lot of people, an enormous amount of people. And the first one here we see is accepted. And it means to feel approved of and a sense of belonging. Knowing that you are doing what is right, whether you are accepted or not. Now, obviously, this means being accepted into something that's positive. If you're accepted into a gang because you passed your initiation, that's not what we're talking about. If you have to go through hazing to be accepted into a fraternity, well, that's not positive. If you got to go to the hospital to get your stomach pumped because you had to do something, that's not positive. We're talking about accepting each other. Remember the acceptance unit where we talked about in chapter 2, accepting diversity and people of other countries and other cultures? Right now we're killing other people of other cultures. And I'm not saying we as the United States, globally, we're all doing this. Everybody wants to blame everybody else, but no one wants to stop. Everybody wants to get the bigger bomb, the bigger gun, the bigger weapon. Well, why are we talking about that with emotions? Because when emotions are left uncontrolled, we see a perfect example in society today. It devastates. And that war, if you have a vehicle and you buy gas, it affects you. If you're buying food, it affects you. You'll notice your food bill has skyrocketed. Well, we live in America to where you might get upset and your emotions might get a little out of hand. I had someone today, I was dealing with a huge gas company. They deliver gas by the thousands of gallons. And he said there was a farmer been buying diesel from him for years. And it's red diesel, so it's non-taxable, usually cheaper because there's no tax on it. He said he came in and ordered his diesel, and they told him what the price was. And man, he just got upset, started cussing, and I'll never do business here again. They said like 3 hours later, he came back and said, I really need to apologize. I went to all your competitors. They were $4 a gallon. You told me $3.85. Now if you're driving down the road, diesel's over $5 a gallon now. So he would have been paying close to $4.80. So we probably don't need to be getting too mad. Once again, as I said in the last class, you might really get upset when gas is $4 and $5 a gallon. But is that better than pulling up to the gas station and they go, oh, we don't have any. There's none here. Sorry. $5 a gallon don't sound too bad then. I'm not saying I agree with it by any means, but we have to learn to control our emotions. We can't change right now what society's bringing at us. And when you're on a fixed income and everything's skyrocketing, depression, stress, thinking that there's just no way to make it work. I know there's people watching right now in classes. In the United States, money is a lot more. I know there's people watching classes right now that make $3 and $4 US a day. in Nigeria, where it takes 580 naira to make $1. Imagine that. So if you have 1,000 naira, you got $2. That's horrible when you got to go buy a loaf of bread and it takes a couple $1,000s. It's horrible. And there's people that they still make it work every day. And they still see a rhyme and reason to do it. So when you think life's bad and you think it just can't get any worse, you know, if you ever feel that way, call the Peaceful Solution. We can put you in contact with countries and people that can talk to you who live it every day. They would think they won the lottery if they can make $300 or $200 a week. Boy, they'd think they won the lottery. Now, if they moved to America and they made that, they'd think, well, it's pretty bad. Those prices are different. But I can tell you, I go across the border quite a bit. When I go across the border, I see wages drop. I don't see the price of food's really not that much cheaper. It's scary how the price of food stays the same, but people are making like $70 a week. And my hat goes off to people that make that work and they find joy in life. You know, but once again, this finding yourself accepted, well, that's what we need to do in a positive way. And that's what the Peaceful Solution is trying to do. We're trying to get people to accept, and we want to feel accepted. Not that we're a, kind of an outside source, but we're trying to say that we all need to learn to accept the difference in others. When I say accept the difference, the positive things. You know, some countries like to have everything hot and spicy. That's okay. Some countries don't. Some countries drink milk in their tea and they drink it hot. The United States is one of the only countries that drink iced tea. And we drink a lot of it. You know, those things don't determine whether you're positive or negative. And they shouldn't determine, if you go to another country and you ask for tea and they bring it to you like coffee, and what is this? It's supposed to have sugar and ice cubes in it and everything. Well, that's great if you're in your country. It's kind of like I tell people when I go down to Mexico, and I don't speak Spanish extremely well, and they speak really fast. And I tell them, slow down and just try it again, repeat it. And I try to understand what they're saying. Why? Because I'm in their country. It's not their job to speak English in their country. It's my job to learn their language in their country. When we go to different countries, we think you get off the plane and you start asking questions in English and people can't answer you. And it's like, what's wrong with these people? Well, if you're in France, they're going to speak French. And if you're in Latin America, they're going to speak Spanish. Unless you go to Brazil, they're going to speak Portuguese. So you have to be mindful. These are things that we kind of get off and everybody should do this. No, everybody shouldn't do it the way we do it. That's not the way the world's set up. And these things make our world interesting. But once again, these emotions, feeling accepted. When people come to you and you're offering the Peaceful Solution, you should accept them in to teach them. And you'll find some people that have some severe issues. The Peaceful Solution is full of them. That's who we are. We came to fix ourselves. That's why we sought this program out. We realize there's a lot of things wrong, and we want to fix them. And a lot of us have been working for decades on this, and we're still working. And we're wanting to help others see what we're learning. We haven't conquered this completely yet, but we're working hard. Well, also affection. Affection is a caring feeling toward another. And that's an affection, you should see that between a mother and a child. That's probably the ideal of affection, to where a mother will stay up all night long. She won't sleep if she thinks that child is suffering. And I've seen mothers do this to where it doesn't matter if they sleep, they don't care if they eat, they're going to take care of that child. Not every mother has that. Not every mother was taught to do that. And as we had a guidance counselor in Laredo, Texas say, children don't come with an owner's manual. And they even said that these manuals they got from the Peaceful Solution helped them more than anything they experienced in college. That says a lot when you can get that kind of information. But this affection towards one another, it isn't just, oh, look at that poor guy out there. He's just standing in the rain, Let me go over here and get him a cherry pie and I'll hand it to him. It'll be so much better. You know what you have after that, right? You have a guy standing in the rain with a cherry pie. It didn't really fix the situation any. You know, we'll get into what it means to help someone for a day or to help them for a lifetime. But the peaceful solution is all about helping someone for a lifetime. And then we have appreciation, and that's feeling recognized as worthwhile. Doing what you know is morally right, whether others appreciate it or not. And that's very important. If you do the right thing and other people don't appreciate it, that's okay. You know, teaching the peaceful solution, we go places and people go, that's just common sense. Okay, then why do we have so much misery? Oh, people are making bad choices. You're right. Do they know how to make positive choices? I guess. No, they don't. If they did, they would be making them. If people truly had this care and concern for other people, they would make choices very differently. People have to be taught. We keep thinking people are born knowing these things. No, they're not. They're not born knowing how to read. They're not born knowing how to write. They're not born knowing how to, paint houses, fix cars. They're not born knowing how to do anything. It's like a computer, and we upload things into their database throughout their life. And unless we upload this database of positive moral education, we're expecting a lot. It's like going up to your 5-year-old and say, hey, get out there and change those spark plugs. Well, I don't know how to do that. I don't even know what a spark plug is. Well, why don't you? Well, no one ever taught it. But if you teach a child as they get older, they'll learn. It's also the same way of trying to tell a child, you need to stop screaming and you need to behave, as you're screaming at the child. You know, if you teach a child to be disrespectful, the child's going to be disrespectful. If you teach the child to not have value about life in general, the child's not going to have value about life in general. We have a huge society of close to 8 billion people that we all need to be re-educated in what makes society operate as a better place. And no, money doesn't fix the problems. It doesn't fix them at all. Moving along to assured, to feel certain and sure, to be satisfied with the truth of the matter. You know, and that's what the peaceful solution offers, where people can be assured that if I do this, even though people might not like me for doing it, I still made a positive contribution to society. It's kind of like when I had a person come up to me yesterday and ask me, man, what do you think they should do to President Putin? Hang him or shoot him? I was like, I think they should probably ask him what he has to say and listen to him. You really think anything positive is going to come out of his mouth? I said, well, so don't get upset with me, but I think it would be more positive than what I've heard come out of your mouth thus far. You're actually talking about killing the person, and I don't even know what he's done, if he's done anything. Well, he's doing this, and that. Okay, but you're telling me that I should be upset that a president is being a bully. Now we're assuming this is true, that a president is being a bully and he's going into another country and taking things. What does that say about our president? Do we apply that same rule to him also? Because he's doing the same things and has done them. And so did the president before him and the president before him. I'm not just talking about our latest or greatest president here. This is something that's continual. Why do we get mad when another country does it? And if it did, we all know that if it didn't make our gas prices go up, which it really doesn't affect your gas prices, but obviously we're watching them go up, then we get upset when it affects us. That's when our emotions get riled up. But if there was war going on, like in Yemen, which has been going on for years, or Somalia, or Sudan, and it doesn't affect us, we're okay with it. No one's called for the heads of those leaders. We're okay with it. Our emotions are peaceful. But let it affect us, and oh man, something needs to be done. You're right. Education needs to be done. Bombs and missiles aren't fixing them. $1 million missiles don't fix problems. We're watching that every day. If bombs, missiles, slingshots, guns, if they fix problems, Israel and Palestine would be the most peaceful place on earth. And it's not. It's not at all. You know, we have cities in the United States that fall underneath those same categories. They're not peaceful. You see Chicago on the news all the time. There's no peace there. Not just Chicago, but that's one you see in news all the time. Well, here you have calm, and this is something we do not see in society. Free from agitation or disturbance. If you base your actions on what is morally right, this will give you the confidence needed for calmness. Well, is it possible that we can bring us into society? We have to become this way first. We have to know, hey, this works, and then we can help it spread. And we can spread it more and more. And it does work. The biggest thing with the peaceful solution is convincing people that it works. And you can't really do that. You have to do it for yourself. Convince yourself that it works. It's something that one person told me, does the peaceful solution work? And the author of the peaceful solution told me one time, I asked him, I said, can you believe someone asked me that? He goes, well, I sure hope you ask him, is water wet? He goes, yeah, it works if you use it. It only works. It only doesn't work if you choose not to use it. And he said, tell people to try it. Just try it and you'll see. It's not a deal where you try it and you're like, that guy sold me snake oil. No, you try it and you actually find out, hey, this actually works. It really works. But you can't just try it for a day. It's not like a diet, where you get all energized, ready to do it, and 3 days later, I tried it. No, you got to do it. You got to put forth the effort. And then being content, this contentment, the state of being satisfied with your action. This is individualized. This is for you as a person. But this is being content that you're doing everything you can, doing your part to make society better. Now, does that mean that means I need to go tell somebody about this, right? Yeah, it does. Well, what if I don't want to? Well, the next time you see or you have someone screaming, yelling, cursing you, or the next time someone steals from you, the next time something negative occurs to you, when you tell them the right and proper way they should have done it, you're spreading it. Unless you're just up for being treated like trash every day, if you're helping people see that things are being done wrong and they can make it better, you're helping spread it. And then, of course, you have euphoric, the overall feeling of well-being or elation, joy or delight in what you do and plan to do. And euphoric is something that if we had everyone on earth making positive moral decisions, we would have complete euphoria. Everybody would be joyful. Everybody would be at peace. And imagine the money that could be spent on food and businesses and jobs when it's not spent on war. An enormous amount of money can be spent on that. But we got to keep our military strong. They keep us safe. I'm still waiting for someone to prove that. That has never been proven. And we see it right now. It's just not true. Well, here being hopeful. Well, let's go back to excitement. That's to arouse strong feeling in. We could get excited about things, and, bad things can come from excitement also. We're talking about being excited over positive things. And we'll get to an example to where, a young man gets excited, turns around and knocks off his mother's vase and breaks it. That's one way, positive emotion can bring back a kind of a negative situation because you broke something. But excitement, and we're talking about this excitement about doing the right thing. You're accepted, that you're appreciative, but doing the right thing. And we're taking these goals are not, we're bringing peace to Ukraine and Russia tomorrow. We're talking about our lives one day at a time. We're working on these things to make them better. And that's what you're trying to get across to your students. You're using these world events to show them this is the breakdown, but it gets fixed one day at a time, and it starts in our lives first. And then it starts in the lives of others. People don't know they like something until they try it most of the time. I was that way. I know of a lot of foods, for example. I didn't think I would like it until I tried it. And then there's foods that I don't want to try because I don't want to know if I like it. I just don't like the results that I see from it. But there's some things that I've eaten, and I've learned that it's not too bad. Wouldn't want to eat every day, but okay. I like it. Well, that's the same way morality does. Whenever you think that I just got to yell at these people to get them to listen. If you can get people to love their jobs, they'll do a much better job for you. And yelling, if you can get someone to just show up to work and just do the job, that's not really the goal. If you can get someone to love their job, that's where people work for a lifetime. And that's what businesses want. That's what we want as a society, to work at a lifetime in this, to be excited about it, have strong feelings about it. And that's what we get about the peaceful solution. People that get involved in the peaceful solution truly get excited about the peaceful solution. And then hopeful. If you remember all the way back to page 117 and 118 in the character unit, we called that the hope page. And that means having great expectation of success, remedy, or solution. And I would dare say, and I know a lot of people think, these people are crazy. Could the peaceful solution solve the problems in Ukraine and Russia? I have no doubt we could. No doubt whatsoever. But it would take everybody working together. And I don't mean us solving it as, okay, now we're in control, you listen to us. No, it means, hey, what you're doing right now is not working. Let's try it this way. And, we have the spoon rule in the parenting manual. Something tells me you would need a spoon when you have politicians together. And then you're going to have a mute button probably also. We've seen that in our presidential debates where they had to have mute buttons. Spoon rule didn't work in that. But that's where you can only talk if you have the spoon in your hand. We use that for, families to help them come together. And it works really well. But of course, having this hope that we can get it done. And I have no doubt. It starts with our own lives. And we've got to fix ourselves first. And it's not the instructor of the peaceful solution, the author, told me one time, he said, the term I'm in charge, I really don't like that. I'd really like to hear people say I'm responsible. He said, there's a lot of people in charge, but they're not very responsible for what's going on, and it causes things to fall apart. And I've never forgot that. And I've always learned that if someone is in charge, that means they're supposed to be responsible for something. And if they're responsible for it, everything should be working. And if it's not, then people need to be reminded. Things need to be pointed out. And all of us need that. Every one of us need that. But then going on to joy here. That's an intense pleasure or satisfaction in morally right action. So knowing that you bought the bicycle instead of stole it. Knowing that you handled a situation in a proper way instead of losing control of your emotions and lashing out at someone. Walking away knowing you made the right choice. There is a lot of satisfaction in that. If you're someone with an anger problem, or if you're someone, with a theft problem, even I know of people that have drinking problems. And just for the fact they were able to walk away without drugs or anything else, they were able to walk away that one day, this is day one. And then they started counting days. But they learned that controlling themselves, their emotions, and the things that go on, that's truly what does it. Just counting days is not enough. I'm dry for one day, because you fall off the wagon eventually. But when you can understand how to make the right decision, it helps enormously. And of course, being optimistic, this optimism, to expect the best possible outcome, being determined to stand on morally right principles, knowing that you have morally right standards. Now, this means taking all the rules and putting them to play in a situation. Optimism isn't that, hopefully only, another 5 or 10,000 die over in Ukraine and Syria right now, or, with what, Russia and Ukraine, or Syria and Israel, or Yemen and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Hopefully, maybe just another 10,000 die and that'll be okay. Why would that be okay? Why is that optimism? Optimism is if we start learning how to deal with these problems in a morally correct way, we can put an end to all harm, all hurt, all pain. That is possible. And when someone tells you it's not, ask them why. Why is it not possible? Because it is possible if people can be educated. And you'll hear a lot, some people just naturally want to be bad. Well, you have to find out why. Are people to where they can't be? We have correctional facilities where we send people there for life. What is that supposed to do for someone? Well, the correctional facility rehabilitates you so when you go back out, well, I'm in for life. I'm not going anywhere. Why do we have these mindsets, and what drives the idea of this correction? If money is the driving force behind your idea of correction or finding a peaceful solution, you'll never find it. There's no money involved in creating peace. A lot of money in war. I've yet to see the first dime in peace. And I've traveled with a lot of men and women that have taught this program for years, and I've never seen anyone make a dime yet. A lot of satisfaction come from this, and still does to this day, but I've yet to see one person make a dime. And then, of course, passion. This is what's needed, and this is what people develop. Whenever they get involved in the peaceful solution, a passion truly consumes a person, and it's a strong liking, desire, or devotion to some activity, object, or concept. You know, once you buy into the concept, so to speak, buy-in means you see it and you put it to work in your life, you'll develop a passion in this character education program. But even for your students, you're just trying to get them to develop a passion toward making the right choice. And then peaceful. That's free from hostility or conflict, freedom from hurtful or wearisome thoughts or emotions, the desire to always treat others as you would desire to be treated. You know, and if we did that in society, we could bring down a lot less pain. You know, and think about this for a moment. I heard a teacher say this years ago, a peaceful solution instructor. And he said, think about this scenario. Let's say you have a person and they're getting ready because drones were becoming big at the time. You fly drones and you drop the missiles, shoot the missiles, drop the bombs through drones. So you're in a country thousands of miles away and you're flying it on the joystick. And they're watching the camera and they watch the bomb go down and boom, they watch what they've seen people there and now they die. What would you think would take place if they could have another monitor here and this one showed their loved ones, their mom, their dad, their brothers, their sisters, their families, their communities, and every time you hit that button to drop a bomb, the same effect took place there. Whatever you did here, the same thing took place here. What would that do to the person? Why? Because, well, there's an attachment here. Over here, well, I don't even see them. I don't know them. They're just figures on a computer screen. But what if every time you did that, that occurred? Because in reality, the hatred that we're stirring up from killing these people are going to affect these people. I've never seen anyone shoot someone's family member and, we can be friends now. Didn't work for the Hatfield and McCoys. And it doesn't work for any other country. You know, so think about this, how to bring peace and the desire to do it. It's more than they're underneath my thumb, now they're listening to me, this is the way it's supposed to be done. I would start asking people, well, you need to start looking, whose thumb is on top of us? And why? Leaders should be teaching peace. Organizations should be teaching peace. All organizations. Don't just say, if you want to be a mediator of peace, your organization should be teaching peace and promoting peace. Otherwise, you're not going to be a very great mediator for peace. And then you have pleasure. This is enjoyment or satisfaction, and this is more than just, eating your best like ice cream. We're talking about making positive decisions and seeing, if you can help someone's life become better, there's an enormous amount of satisfaction in that. When you can help someone who's made wrong choices, and you can look at them and you're not telling them, I know what you've been through because I've been through it myself. And a lot of our teachers of the peaceful solution, they help people, and the people they're helping never know those teachers went through those very same things themselves. Whether it's alcoholism, drug addiction, or any other, anger problems. These things run deep and hard, and none of us are immune from them. None of us are. So when you're helping people, most of the people will never know that you yourself actually, I can tell you what it's like. Because a lot of times you'll have people go, you don't even know what it's like. Yeah, I do. Been there, done that. And then there's a lot of things I can't say that. And I always direct them to, but this teacher can tell you what it's like. They've been there. They've done that. And we have it in the peaceful solution where We have people that can pretty much identify with certain failures in life because we've been through those and we've had to recuperate from them. And then you have, this productive, to feel capable of yielding results, benefits, or profits. We're not talking about dollars and cents. We're talking about, character points, if you want to call it that. We're talking about helping communities be better, helping society be better. You start in a school, if you just took children from kindergarten to 12th grade and one of their subjects was moral character education. I went through school, I took algebra, I took calculus, and I tried trigonometry, just couldn't do it. Wasn't smart enough for that. And in my job that I do today, I use general math. I don't really use the other equational solutions that were given to me. And when I sit down to look at them, I actually don't really remember what I learned. But making decisions and learning positive character is something I would have used for my whole life. Every day I could have used that. Every situation I could have used that. And if that was part of the curricula that was taught in a school, is it more important than reading, writing, and arithmetic? Yeah, it is. And if you think it's not, go tell that to the parents in Chicago where their teenagers are being killed left and right. They know how to read and write, and they can add. Go tell it to them. I think they would agree with you. If that would have saved my child's life, I would go for it. But it's usually after the fact that these things come to play in people's lives. And then being thankful, being appreciative of the benefits received. And whenever you're teaching positive character, you're teaching character education, the author of the Peaceful Solution is probably the most ideal role model, I think, for what it means to be thankful when you're teaching character education. Whenever you're the person that's offering these things, it's not readily accepted in society. People want to look at you as, so you know everything now. You got the answers to everything. Well, does the Peaceful Solution have the answers to everything? Yes, it does. And I truly believe that. Do I apply them in my life 100% every minute of the day? No, I don't, but I need to. And I'm working on it. And I work with an enormous amount of people that do the same thing as I do every day. And when we mess up, when we make mistakes, when we do something that's wrong, we identify it and we try to learn from it. That's what makes society better. It doesn't mean that all problems will disappear in a day. No, they won't. But we can start making a difference, a huge difference. But I watched the author, along with many other people, become ridiculed and slandered and a lot of negative things said because he was trying to make a difference in society. And the work that he did and still does, because his work goes on through an enormous amount of people all around the world that are starting to see it. And you can go on, for example, we know there's a lot of refugees, and we'll close with this. We know there's a lot of refugees that are from Haiti, or as they say, Haiti, down in Mexico right now. If you're watching, you can actually watch classes in Creole now. We have certified teachers that are teaching classes in Creole, in your language. And you can watch these classes. And we're adapting these. There's numerous amounts of languages we have from Swahili, on, that they're being offered to everyone. And I'm sure you'll find a language that we're not doing yet, and we'll do our very best. We're working on Japanese right now. That's way outside of my intelligence level. But these are things that we're working on because communication of these facts are what helps society become better. And we all need it. Borders do not separate human beings other than there's a border there. It doesn't make an American more valuable than a Mexican or a Mexican more valuable than someone from Honduras or El Salvador. And it doesn't make Canada more valuable than an American. We're all human beings, and we should not be defined by country. That does not determine positive or negative character. It can determine the influences that are put upon you. But let's look, and we're going to stop at that point, and that'll give William a great opportunity. He'll be the next teacher, and that will be on 313 at 6:30 or 5:30. Don't come at 6:30; you'll miss the whole class. 5:30 So 3:13 at 5:30, and he will go over taking a closer look at these emotions we talked about and letting us know how, some of these are secondary emotions, and we can get control of it, especially when it's secondary. We just have to identify what starts the process. What is the trigger? And when we do that, yes, it is possible to bring peace to our world. And right now, look out. Take time to look out. You don't see peace, but we can do it. Thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.